Welcome you. Today we're going to tackle something pretty big. It's all about pushing past what feels, normal.
Achieving really significant results, right?
Exactly. We're diving deep into the principles in Grant Cardone's book, The 10X Rule. Think of this as, well, a way to quickly grasp a mindset that's really focused on massively increasing your effort.
And setting goals that might seem, well, almost crazy high at first.
Right. So our mission here is to pull out the core ideas from this work, ideas that can help you break through, those limitations we all have.
And maybe achieve more than what feels ordinary right now.
We're aiming for those real aha moments, the kind that just click. The sources are excerpts from his book on success. So let's get into it.
Okay, so the first thing that really jumps out is how Cardone even defines success. It's not just like reaching a goal and you're done.
Yeah.
No, he talks about it as getting what you desire, sure, but then, and this is key, maintaining it, multiplying it, and repeating the action.
So it's a cycle, an ongoing thing.
Exactly. It's a process, not just a single win.
That makes sense. It's extraordinary. Well, that's different for everyone, isn't it?
Totally.
But the idea is about your path. Yeah. Moving yourself to a better spot than you are now.
Right. Exceeding your current ordinary.
I liked his analogy about success being like taking a breath.
Oh, yeah, that was good.
Even after a huge achievement, that big breath in, you still need the next breath.
You can't just stop breathing.
Right. It implies this relentless need for continuous action, always moving forward.
That's such a crucial point, the continuous nature of it. Success isn't some island you arrive at and just, relax forever. It needs constant effort, looking ahead. Which naturally brings us to the main idea of the book.
The 10X rule itself.
Yep, the 10X rule.
Okay, let's unpack that. So the basic idea is whatever action you think you need for a goal.
Multiply it by 10.
By 10. And
Yeah.
same for the goals themselves, aim 10 times higher than what you first think is, like worthwhile or reasonable. Now, I can already hear people thinking, hang on, isn't that just setting yourself up for failure? Massive disappointment.
That's the immediate reaction, yeah. But Cardone tackles that directly.
What's his reasoning?
Well, his logic is, look, any goal worth pursuing is going to be tough, right? There will be obstacles, you'll need effort, persistence.
Nothing worthwhile is easy.
Exactly. So since you're going to face challenges anyway, why not aim that effort at something potentially huge?
Okay.
He asks this question, would you rather fall short trying to make $100,000 or fall short trying to make $1 million?
Ah, I see. Even falling short on the bigger goal could land you somewhere much better.
Precisely. The potential outcome is just way more impactful.
It definitely reframes failure in a way. He also mentions that feeling, when you hit smaller goals, the realistic ones.
And it's kind of meh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you did it, check the box, but it doesn't really give you that deep satisfaction you were hoping for.
Right. And interestingly, he argues that setting those small targets can actually make you invest less energy.
How so?
Well, you might not prepare properly for the unexpected problems that always crop up. You're less geared up for it.
Whereas if you're shooting for something 10 times bigger,
it forces you to operate on a completely different level. You have to think bigger, plan more robustly. It actually demands more focus and efficiency.
which ties into, wanting to learn things quickly but properly. Bigger targets force that efficiency.
Absolutely.
And it's not just the goal size, is it? It's about how badly we seem to, misjudge the effort needed for pretty much anything.
Oh, definitely. He argues we consistently underestimate the time, the energy, the sheer work involved. Building a house, finding a job, launching a product.
We always think it'll be easier or faster than it is.
Almost always. And then what happens? Disappointment, discouragement.
And you might think the goal was just too hard or impossible.
Exactly. Instead of realizing, maybe I just didn't put in enough action.
And Cardone really warns against the typical reaction then, which is
lowering the target. He hates that.
Right. He uses sales examples. Missed targets lead to managers just reducing the targets for next month.
Yeah, and he says that just kills morale. It weakens skills. It's totally counterproductive.
His rule is ironclad on this, isn't it?
Unwavering. Never reduce the target. Always increase the activity.
So the target itself is rarely the actual problem.
That's his core belief. He thinks almost any goal is reachable if you just apply enough action consistently over time. He even uses the extreme example of wanting to go to another planet.
Well,
and says you should operate as if the right actions eventually will make it happen. It's about the mindset of possibility driven by action.
he talks about this sort of mental calculator we have.
Yeah.
that automatically rationalizes failure by blaming everything else. The market, the economy, competitors.
Anything but our own level of effort. It's the easy way out, psychologically.
It is, but he's adamant. The right actions in the right amounts, with persistence, that leads to success, regardless of the external stuff.
Yeah, he really hammers that home.
He shares a story about launching a product, right? Where it wasn't working.
Yes. He realized he'd massively underestimated the effort. Thought a couple of sales calls a day would do it. He upped it to like 20 or 30 calls a day, 10 times the effort, and bam, immediate turnaround.
So the market just responded to that higher level of action.
Exactly. It's like when you correctly estimate the effort needed, your whole posture changes. You're more committed, more serious, and the marketplace picks up on that.
That's fascinating. It projects a different energy.
Totally. Which brings us to the idea of luck.
Ah, yes, luck. Cardone's take is interesting.
He basically says luck isn't just random. It's often a byproduct of taking massive action.
How does that work?
Well, the more you do, the more you're out there, the more chances you create, more shots on goal, more opportunities bump into you, more momentum builds.
So you're making your own luck, essentially.
In a way, yes. He gives us great examples. Colonel Sanders getting rejected like 80 times.
Before KFC took off, yeah.
Yeah. Stallone before Rocky, Walt Disney getting laughed at for Disneyland. These weren't overnight successes. It was relentless effort that looked like luck later.
It's that old saying, the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Pretty much. Cardone adds that repeated success can become a habit, creating this sort of magnetism.
Magnetism.
Yeah, like successful people attract more success, but it stems from their mindset. They see success almost as a duty, a responsibility.
Not just something nice to have, an obligation.
Right. And that drives a much more proactive approach.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. He talks about the myth of scarcity, particularly around success.
Ooh, this is a big one. He completely rejects the idea that there's a limited pie of success.
So someone else succeeding doesn't mean less for me.
Quite the opposite, he argues. Seeing others succeed should actually inspire you. It shows you what's possible. It creates opportunities.
How does it create opportunity?
Well, think about it. Someone builds a successful business in a new niche. It proves the market exists. It validates the concept. It can open doors for related ventures.
Instead of thinking, oh, they got there first, game over.
Exactly. That zero-sum thinking is incredibly limiting. He stresses you can get as much success as you want right alongside others. There's enough to go around.
It's about expanding your view of what's available.
Totally. Abundance, not scarcity.
So, okay, we get the mindset. Massive goals, massive action, abundance. How do you actually do it? What does massive action look like in practice?
He gives his own example from his early seminar business days. Going into a new city, knowing no one.
Yeah.
And making like 40 cold calls or actual physical visits per day.
40. Wow.
Yeah, working crazy hours, morning till night. He tells a story about a real estate agent who tagged along for a few days and was just wiped out from watching him.
Just watching.
Yeah.
That really paints a picture of the intensity.
It does. And it shows the shift, right? It's not about tracking hours anymore. It's about pure results, getting it done no matter what.
And he says this kind of extreme activity can become normal. For you, anyway.
Yeah, it becomes your habit, your standard operating procedure. He mentions people asking him, like, why are you working so late? Or making calls on a Saturday.
Because for them, it's unusual, but for him, it's just what's required.
Exactly. And you can't worry about what others think, or even just counting the hours. You have to act like your future depends on it. Every day.
He makes a good point that often the first problem isn't competition, it's just nobody knows you exist.
Obscurity. Yeah. Right. And the cure for obscurity, massive amounts of activity, calls, emails, visits, getting your name out there.
It sounds exhausting, though.
Oh, he admits it can be demanding, physically, mentally, but he argues it creates more certainty and security in the long run than, say, sitting back and just planning.
And you have to be ready for the critics, right? The workaholic label.
Absolutely. People operating at lower levels might not get it, but he notes that really successful people, they rarely criticize massive action.
Because they've probably done it themselves. They understand.
They get it. And interestingly, he says massive action often means making unreasonable choices.
Unreasonable how?
Doing things others wouldn't. And it will create new problems. But that's a good sign.
New problems are a sign of progress.
It means you're doing enough to actually stir things up, to make waves. If everything's smooth sailing, you're probably not taking enough action. He even advises just saying yes to almost every opportunity.
Just dive in.
Pretty much.
Okay, what about planning then?
Yeah.
Business plans, strategies. Does 10X throw that out the window?
Not entirely, but he's very critical of plans based on average assumptions.
Average.
Yeah, like assuming average market conditions, average competitor response, average effort needed. He says those plans are doomed.
Why?
Because reality is never average. You'll face unexpected headwinds, fierce competition, economic shifts. Average effort won't cut it.
So people start with optimistic projections.
Right. Based on these average ideas. Then things get tough, targets get missed, enthusiasm drops.
Infighting starts, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
People doubting if they were really ready?
Exactly. And the mistake, he says, is often blaming the plan or looking for more money, instead of realizing the real issue was underestimating the sheer amount of 10x action required from day one.
He used that analogy, doesn't he? About the backpack?
Oh, yeah, the 1,000-pound backpack hiking uphill into strong winds.
That's the level of persistent, massive action he thinks is often needed.
It sounds daunting, but knowing that up front, he argues, actually makes it less overwhelming because you're prepared for the real fight.
You're not surprised when it gets tough.
Right. Which leads into his views on competition versus domination.
Okay. His stance is pretty blunt here, isn't it?
Very. Competition is for sissies. That's the quote.
Ah, okay. So what's the alternative?
Domination. He thinks focusing too much on competitors actually limits your own creativity. You end up just reacting.
So don't play their game. Create your own.
Exactly. He talks about his first business succeeding because he created a totally unique sales approach, information-assisted selling. There was no competition because no one else was doing it.
He carved out his own space.
Right. The goal shouldn't be to beat the competition. It should be to make them irrelevant, to dominate your sector.
Like Apple, maybe. They don't seem to worry too much about copying others.
That's a perfect example. They set the pace. They dominate.
And the key to doing that, according to Cardone.
It's simple, he says, but hard. Do what others refuse to do.
Go the extra mile or 10 miles.
Exactly. Create that unfair advantage ethically through sheer willingness to outwork and out-innovate.
Now, he also talks quite a bit about the middle class. Not always in a flattering way.
No, he sees the middle class, that conventional idea of it, as often being the most financially insecure group, ironically, the most trapped.
He gives some income figures, right? Like 35K, 50K, maybe up to 65K.
Yeah, citing census data from around 2008. And his point is, at those levels, especially in cities, true financial security is really, really hard to achieve. You're always vulnerable.
Just getting by, maybe, but not thriving or feeling truly secure.
Right. He even mentions the upper middle class, maybe earning over $1 million a year.
Which sounds like a lot.
It is, but he suggests even then, the kind of absolute freedom people imagine might still be further off than they think. His point is to aim way beyond these traditional benchmarks.
Aim for true financial independence, regardless of labels.
Exactly. Which ties right into the next big idea. Obsession.
Obsession. That word has negative vibes for a lot of people.
It does, but Cardone reclaims it.
Yeah.
He says action without obsession is like a fire without wood.
It just fizzles out.
Yeah. You need that intense driving focus, that obsession to follow through, to see things to completion.
He thinks most people only put in enough effort for it to feel like work.
While the super successful are totally consumed by the goal, the reward, the mission, if your own ideas aren't constantly on your mind, he asks, why would they be on anyone else's?
Good point. He challenges the idea that obsession is unhealthy.
He argues pretty much every major achievement in history came from some level of obsession. Intense focus, unwavering dedication.
He talks about his own life, getting obsessed with his goals after a period of not being so.
Yes, and how it turned everything around for him. He uses that example, too, of Shimon Peres, the former Israeli president.
Oh, yeah, 87 years old.
Doing 900 interviews in 18 months. That's obsession driven by a mission.
That's incredible energy. Wow. Okay, so massive action, obsession. What about failure?
Yeah.
Setbacks are inevitable.
Bro. And his take here is really empowering. He basically says, there's no such thing as failure, only quitting.
As long as you don't stop, you haven't failed.
That's the idea. You might have setbacks, you might need to change course, but actual failure only happens when you give up entirely.
And he reminds us that energy, creativity, ideas, these aren't finite resources.
No, they're renewable. You can always generate more. You can always try a new angle. He points to that study, the mystery shopper one.
Where most businesses didn't even ask for the sale.
Yeah, a shocking 63% never even presented a proposal. It shows how often we hold back. We don't go all the way.
So his advice is go all in.
Every time. With every customer, every opportunity, even if your closing ratio per attempt drops slightly, your overall production will skyrocket.
And he asks, what's the worst that can really happen if you give it your absolute all?
Usually not much. Maybe you get a no, but you learn, you move on.
Okay, let's talk about economic downturns. Most people pull back, right?
Instinctively, yeah. Conserve cash, reduce effort, wait it out.
But Cardone says, do the opposite.
Exactly. Expand, don't contract. He sees downturns as massive opportunities because most people are pulling back. It creates space.
I feel like that really strong quote.
I would rather die in expansion than die in contraction. I would rather fail pushing forward than in retreat.
That's intense.
It is. But his philosophy is stay active, keep engaging, look for chances to grow, show progress. Only pull back briefly to regroup, then push forward again.
He believes your energy and creativity are more valuable than just sitting on cash.
Far more valuable. The goal is always expansion, aiming to dominate your sector through that relentless, massive action. More contacts, more influence, more visibility.
Which leads to this idea of omnipresence.
Right. Especially when things are tough economically. The people who seem to be everywhere are the ones who gain the most ground.
Become highly visible.
Exactly. He talks about when he faced criticism or attacks, he doubled down on visibility, wrote more books, used YouTube more, got his message out even louder.
Turning negative energy into fuel for more presence.
Precisely. And for you, listener, thinking about learning quickly, being omnipresent in your field means you're constantly exposed to information, constantly learning.
So the takeaway is, take action readily. Focus on now.
Yes. Highly successful people don't just talk, they do. Unbelievable amounts of action, consistently.
While unsuccessful people might just talk about plans.
Right, and the successful ones invest in actions that might not pay off today, but will build over time. Taking action isn't a gift, it's a discipline you build daily.
No procrastination.
Procrastination is the enemy. For the successful, it's only now and the future. He tells that story about challenging his staff to make 50 calls in 30 minutes.
And then he jumped in and did it himself, even faster.
Yeah, made like 28 calls in 22 minutes. Just to show. Stop thinking. Start doing it. Act now.
More volume, better quality often follows.
Definitely. And embrace change. Don't fight it.
Successful people look for change, anticipate it.
Yes, constantly looking for improvements for the next market shift. Like Steve Jobs constantly changing Apple's own products.
And motivation isn't external.
No, it's internal. Comes from setting your goals daily, focusing on what's possible.
And finally, this idea of ethics.
Yeah, he sees it as almost unethical not to use your full potential. That gap between what you can do and what you are doing, that's an ethical issue for him.
Wow, that's a strong take. He gives a personal example of putting this all together, right? The TV show and big goal.
Yes. Aiming for a TV show, becoming a NYT bestseller, big goals.
10x goals.
Absolutely. And the approach was pure 10x. Told his team, anything moving towards these goals gets done. No excuses.
He mentions the painful part of contacting media, publishers.
Oh, yeah. Facing that barrage of negativity. Pitches rarely work. Market's terrible. Odds are stacked against you.
All the reasons why it won't work.
Exactly. And the key was ignoring it. Disregarding the naysayers, refocusing on the goal, and acting despite the fear or discomfort.
You're doing this during a bad economy when others were shrinking.
Yes. Hiring PR firms, launching multiple projects simultaneously, taking massive risks while competitors contracted. That's the core principle again.
Expand when others contract. Take risks.
That's the 10x mindset in action.
So if we boil it down, the key takeaways are:
set those 10x targets, make sure they align with your deeper purpose, and crucially, write them down every morning, every night. Keep them front and center.
So there we have it, a pretty intense dive into the core ideas of the 10X rule. It's really about, well, thinking and acting way beyond your comfort zone.
To achieve things that seem extraordinary right now.
Yeah. We really hope this discussion sparked some insights for you, our listener. Maybe offered a new way to look at your own goals and the actions you're taking.
Which brings us to a final thought, something for you to chew on.
Okay.
What could actually happen? What results might you really see? If you truly committed to 10x thinking and 10x action in just one important area of your life, starting right now.
Just one area.
Yeah.
How would that change things? How would it shift your view of what's possible, what your limits really are?
Something to consider.
Definitely. We encourage you to mull that over, maybe even check out the source material for yourself. And as always, thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us today.